everybody, and welcome back to another great edition of my Grue Rume Show. And for the Grue Rume Show today, we got two amazing guests, and Derek Siow, I'll have you say your last name when you come on, and Rishi Gosh. And I'm really looking forward to talking to both of them. Derek is a actor and a writer, and Rishi is a professional wrestler and also an actor. And there's a British wrestling film coming out that they're both in, and we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to dive a little bit into both of their professional careers. I am Rocco Cross. I am the host at Stutters, as you could tell. I am the host of the Grue Room, and my interview with these two amazing men will be coming up very soon. This is my Grue Room, and as always, welcome to my nightmare. Stay tuned. Yeah.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And before I start recording this, I was talking to you both about the world of pro wrestling. We were just talking about how I'm in Philly and you guys were the ECW fans. And so like tell me about like what like made you both like love pro wrestling so much.
Mate, well, where do you start with that question? Right? I've been a pro wrestling fan my entire life. Like, since like the first wrestling I can remember was Hulk Hogan, King Kong Bundy, WrestleMania 2. I remember trying to stay up and watch that. And I remember I fell asleep because that thing is long, man. WrestleMania 2 was super long. And for a little kid, man, I just couldn't do it, And I tried to tape it as well. And I was so bummed as well because when I went back to watch it the next day, I ran out of tape. Because it was so long, the tapes back then, like you could only record like 3 hours max, and that thing went on forever, So, but yeah, huge wrestling fan of the '80s, Hogan, Warrior, Macho, and all that, Big Boss Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, all that, and then throughout the '90s, in our teenage years, Monday Night Wars, WCW, and as we're talking about ECW, which is you're from Philadelphia, and like just the fact that you were there, man, like. Yeah, at the time, it's like just everything. Rob Van Dam, Taz, Sabu, all that. Like, just that's what really got you going.
And it's funny because like the guys you just mentioned from ECW, Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer are actually still doing it yet.
Yeah, RVD was just on AEW, and that's what I was thinking. Like Bully Ray. Bubba Ray.
Oh yeah, that's right. Bully Ray's doing it too. Yeah,
and RVD, and like, that's nuts. Like I was thinking about, like a Sandman and New Jack and all those guys. But the fact that RVD is still going, and he looked good as well.
I know he did. Like, I mean, he was still hitting all of his like spots, his flips and stuff, and wrestling Jack Perry was because Jack Perry is amazing, and it's hard to believe that he's actually Luke Perry's son, because you would think that he would get involved with doing acting instead of wrestling, but he went into the wrestling world.
I think a lot of these older guys, they're so. Do you know what I mean? You've got a lot of an older generation of doing such great things. I mean, look at someone like AJ Styles now. Do you know what I mean? He's still going as well as he ever has.
Yes.
What I find with a lot of the older wrestlers is even though they don't do as much, as they did in their younger days, their matches are better because their mind, creativity is so much better. So it's I think for kind of guys around our age, it's a really interesting time to see those people who we watched, 15, 20 years ago, still doing it. And still putting on, really good stuff. So
I know. I mean, look at Sting. Like he's 60 years old, and the guy's still jumping off ladders, going through tables. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, and to think that it was back in like, because I think the first time like Sting was huge in WCW, like really early night. Like he was Sting and Ric Flair. It was that and Lex Luger, right?
Yes.
Like that's why we tuned it. Sting, Lex Luger, and Ric Flair were like your Hogan, Macho, and Warrior of WWE.
Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah, like it's amazing, like how and Jericho too. Like the guy, he's been around for like 35 years, 40 years, something around there, and Jericho's still putting on like really great matches yet.
Yeah, Jericho, I swear, that guy, he's like in another league, man. Like another league of human, I think. For that guy to be still going, doing what he's doing, but like he's like top of the game. And it's like, and you always think about that. It's like, which is tough, man. For wrestlers, like what's the next phase for them? Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like after, because wrestling, like any other athlete, has a shelf life, right?
Oh yeah,
And, like,
definitely because you get
yeah,
hurt.
especially like the guys from ECW. Oh my god, like their shelf life is like, you know. But yeah, and so it's interesting to see like what happens after that, you know.
Mhm.
And you're
Yeah, well,
seeing kind of a lot of the guys getting into the film industry. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, the obvious ones are Dwayne Johnson, Batista, but so many other guys are doing it. And I
yeah,
suppose that, that's the reason we kind of wanted to create something. I mean, I've been wrestling, on the indie circuit for about 23 years now, and I mean, I run, the Wrestling Academy full time, so I'm there most days, and
yeah.
your body does get battered, and you kind of think, what am I going to do afterwards? And in America, you can see the clear path, and I think that's kind of what me and Derek want to create here. That path for these wrestlers and very good wrestlers
Mhm.
um, to go on to and do, because they're so good creatively. They've got such good minds. They're such decent performers. But obviously, the body in what we do in wrestling just doesn't last forever, unfortunately.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
and it's like, the guys, like they've actually been on TV, like a lot of the
oh
guys from
yeah,
the 90s and all the 2000s, all these wrestlers, they've been on TV, and so that's kind of their world, in front of a camera, and in America they've got that very clear path of, WWE, and then yeah, guys like that Richie mentioned, like John Cena, The Rock, that can all
Mhm.
go into Hollywood, but over in the UK or in Britain, we don't really have a Hollywood. Do you know what I mean? And so, and there's
Yeah, that's
so many
true.
great British wrestlers that that you guys have seen over in the States already, and in say WWE and AEW, like Finn Balor and Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, and a whole bunch of them that are on AEW, even, like and New Japan, and they're only
Yeah.
the ones that make it over there. Like, you imagine like how many over here there are that are really great performers, and so after their wrestling careers, it'll be good for them to have something, at least have opportunities to stay in front of the camera or keep performing. And
Oh yeah, like that's why I wanted to ask too, because like, we all like living in America, like I know how the wrestling scene is here, but the British wrestling scene, from what I hear, because like I know some of it, but not a lot of it, and from what I hear, the British wrestling scene is like really like passionate and crazy and like they want to see wrestling and they come out in droves and they scream and they holler and you could see like when WWE and AEW, when they do something over there, it's a little different than America. Like they're more like wild and screaming, and that you could
Yeah,
tell they have more fun than what we have here. So like, how's the British wrestling scene there?
they absolutely love it here. I mean, I've done, the fans are like no other. I think it's kind of the best place in the world to develop as a wrestler. And you know what I mean? I've wrestled and hung out with a lot of the big names, and they all say the same thing, that the British indie scene, the talent on there is far, superior, they
Yeah,
say, to, in the States, they just
yeah,
say the guys are so well trained. And I've probably done about, I don't know, 6 to 8 shows in the last 6 weeks.
oh
And,
wow,
three of those shows had well over 400 people at them, so
really?
yeah, they're busy shows. And do you know what I mean? You go to these, smaller towns, let's say, in the UK, and you get these lively, enthusiastic huge crowds, which you think, wow, what a pleasure it is to perform in front of them. And I remember when Daniel Bryan, he came over a long time ago, so I think I
Mhm.
did. It was over 20 years ago. He came over to my first academy where I was training, and he ran a seminar there, which was incredible.
That's
But
awesome.
then we took him up to some of the shows, holiday parks we call them. So it's where kind of families go, and stay and they have entertainment. But the wrestling that they had there, the guys from the States, guys like Daniel Bryan, they absolutely loved doing these shows. And I think they learned a lot about working a crowd from these shows. And they would come over every summer to do and be part of them. Some of these crowds, well over 1,000 people there, so it's, yeah, really lively. And it's, I suppose, it, wrestling's kind of ingrained in Britain, and a lot of people don't realise, how much wrestling there is over here.
Yeah, I saw a really great show actually that Rishi was on. I think I think AJ Styles was in the main event, and
Oh,
on that
really?
card they had like Shinsuke Nakamura, Ishii, and
Oh my
I think you were
God.
wrestling Colt Cabana or something on that show where
Yeah,
and yeah, that was and just to have the international wrestlers come over and
Yeah.
beat off that crowd. It's like even just like watching say Money in the Bank that was just in the UK, like
Yeah.
and it's like when I watch say when they go to Canada, when you see those Canadian crowds as well,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
WWE like say WrestleMania, what was it, X8 was it when The Rock and
Oh,
Hogan,
and Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
yeah, that crowd was rabid, man. And
And
it's kind of
and
like that.
Hogan was the heel, and they were cheering him.
Yeah.
it was
I think these
amazing.
crowd they do that in Canada. I think they do that over here as well, don't they? In the UK,
Yeah,
they love
it's
to.
so,
Like,
and
I
that's
think
the
some of
great
the
thing about wrestling, isn't it? You don't, it's unpredictable how the fans are going to
Mm-hmm.
react.
Mm-hmm.
because even did you hear the pop for LA Knight at Money in the Bank? Like
Yes.
I think that's helped really build that guy over.
Oh my
Like
God.
guys
He's
on a
getting huge pops now.
yeah, and then I think when they did the Money in the Bank one, that was one of the first times that it was really really prominent where they were like chanting it like throughout the whole match kind of thing.
Oh, I know. I know. Yeah, it was wild. Like L.A. Knight reminds me so much of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like I really I don't know. I'm probably one of the few that aren't like fully behind him. Like I don't see nothing special because I like to me it's like another version of Austin.
Right, I see it, I see it. But do you know what it reminds me? He reminds me of Mr. Kennedy. Remember when
Yeah.
Kennedy came out? He had that same where they can do the promos and he had that whole it felt like he had this thing behind him. Do you know what I mean? Like like it
Mhm.
was he was growing organically. It felt for Mr. Kennedy, and that was all work on the mic, And it's just a shame he got plagued with like injuries and stuff. But I
Yeah,
think
I know.
him and LA Knight, I see parallels there. It's whether they can
Yeah,
break
I
through
could definitely see that.
in your
Yeah.
run.
It's just all about charisma. And I tell all my students that, do you know what I mean? You can do all the great wrestling and have these great wrestling moves, which they do, to be fair to them. But it's the charisma which really
Exactly.
catches the crowd's attention. And you could just tell when LA Knight walks out that he's oozing that charisma.
Oh,
Whether you like
definitely.
him or not, you can just feel that
Definitely.
charisma, and that's very appealing to the crowd. I mean, look at someone like Hulk Hogan. I mean, his finisher was just a leg drop. Do you know what I mean? It was so charismatic, and a lot of people still say,
Well,
Hulk
how's The
Hogan.
Rock? The Rock's was just an elbow. The Rock's
Yeah,
was
oh,
That's
literally
true.
just that.
That's
And and
true.
I remember like the
yeah,
first time The Rock did that, everyone was like, it was like a joke, right? And look how over that guy. It's just like,
mm.
Yeah. It was it was funny because like Hogan in America, he was just like the big boot and the leg drop. But when you watch him wrestle in Japan, it was a totally different Hogan. Like he actually wrestled.
in Japan's when they can really just let it all go and
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's the same on the indie scenes as well. It's like it's when they're on the indie scenes, they can just, it's a different vibe. It's a different feel. And you can give off a different presentation as well.
And there's so
Oh
many
yeah.
different indie shows you do as well. Do you know what I mean? You've got family friendly ones, you've got your adult ones, you've got, do you know what I mean, your story based ones. And what's really important, to be that, top performer who's getting a lot of bookings on that wrestling circuit is just knowing your audience. And yeah, again, I think with what we're doing with starting this production company and the film, it's again just using those versatile talents that
Hmm.
wrestlers have to portray something special, because some of them are so good at performing. It's unbelievable. There's so much talent, well, worldwide on the circuit. But yeah, obviously, I've seen a lot on the British circuit. There's just so many talented people. It's unbelievable.
Well,
Yeah,
and I think because it's indie as well, it's like, when you have a movie that's not
yeah,
indie, like a very mainstream movie, it's
yeah.
always that it's like The Wrestler was a great movie. Do you know what I mean? But there
Oh my
wasn't
God, I love
much
that
wrestling
movie.
in it. It was great. Like, and yeah, I love The Wrestler, and our film's like kind of like The Wrestler. It's kind of like fighting with my family, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a lot like Rocky as well. And what I
yeah.
love about Rocky is that there's almost whole boxing matches. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll get like a whole round, and then there might be a few highlights, and then you'll get
Yeah,
another
exactly.
whole round of something. And with the wrestling movies that we've seen, um, you know, it's kind of almost trying to cater to the mainstream audiences, like, oh, this is how things are done, But with this, we kind of want to go, yeah, let's just assume, you know, that we're not going to be nudge nudge wink wink. This is how a heel is, a bad guy, and a face is like, we're just going to say it as if the audience already knows, treat them as if they
Hmm.
already know what everything is.
Hmm.
It's kind of like a film for wrestling fans, in that sense. And we want to have like whole matches. Do you know what I mean? Like where
Oh
that tells
yeah.
the story as well. So you've got the movie which tells the story, but then the matches tell another story. And I think there's something really, it shows the art form of wrestling as well, in that you can be engaged. Because I think when it comes to cinema and movies, they're worried that maybe what they're worried about is that the match can't tell a good enough story to hold their attention or whatever. But hopefully with the film that we're doing is like British wrestling, Japanese strong style wrestling, that kind of stuff, and it tells a really nice story. Hopefully that we can get something like that across as well, and so
And
we get to
you look,
showcase a lot of the British and European wrestling.
yeah, you look at something like Rocky, and those bouts have very specific stories, don't they?
Oh no,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
and forth, and in between you're getting their mannerisms and that kind of thing. And I always think that's the beauty of wrestling. Do you know what I mean? That's why people watch wrestling. I mean, you can have a UFC fight, which is brilliant, but that could go 1 minute, you know. But with when you've got two good wrestlers in there, do you know what I mean? You know you're going to be thoroughly entertained for that
Oh,
15
definitely.
minutes or whatever. And Rocky really tells those stories of the characters, with the personalities in the match. And I think having films with wrestling in it, you've got the leverage to do that as well.
And Derek mentioned like the movie that Paige did,
Soraya.
Saraya, yeah, fighting with my fat family, and you're actually in the movie, right?
Yeah, I
And
am.
so like how was that experience like? I mean, because you are a pro a pro rest wrestler, and you train, you teach, and your life is wrestling. So how was it like to be like a a wrestler? Because I'm sure most of the people they had in the movie are actors, but you're like a real like pro wrestler. So how was it like working on that film, and did you get a chance to actually hang out with Paige?
Yeah, so it was amazing, really good. I mean, going back to the wrestler, I watched the wrestler and I saw all these indie wrestlers in it, and I thought to myself, wow, it'll be so cool to be in a wrestling movie.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, lo and behold, the auditions came up, went to all the auditions, and there were hundreds of wrestlers there, so many. And we had to do in-ring stuff, and then we had to do the promo stuff as well. So I did the in-ring stuff, and do you know what I mean? I think I held my own. I've got a very big character, so I think they liked that. And then it was a 20-second promo thereafter. So in 20 seconds, you've got to sell yourself. And I remember we were in this big line and I did it. And the person after me came up to me and went, I could hear your promo from behind the curtain. And I was thinking, this guy's booked to roll. Just from hearing it from behind the curtain was a great feeling. And then, yeah, getting on set was amazing. I'm a big fan of Vince Vaughn. So getting to, do a scene with him I was kind of a bit mesmerized, actually, because he's doing his act. Do you know what I mean? Like a meter and a half away from me, and you get lost in the moment because someone of that standard, and you think of him as a comedy actor, but he was doing some quite serious acting. And I was like,
Vince Vaughn's a really good actor, man. Like, yeah, from really back in the days with was it City Slickers? Not City Slickers. What was that movie that he did, that Jon Favreau one? Swingers.
Oh,
yeah. I remember first seeing him in Swingers, and then all the other stuff he did, like Wedding Crashers and all the stuff he did with Owen Wilson. He's a great actor, man.
People forget these comedy acts when they do the serious stuff. Robin Williams was one, wasn't he? When he suddenly went serious, it was incredible. And yeah, when he went, when Vince Vaughn went serious in this, it was great. And then between takes, he was, telling me about his jiu-jitsu and stuff. So he was just a really nice guy to hang out with, If we even grabbed my arm and started doing a bit of jiu-jitsu on me, which was good fun.
That's awesome.
It was just a good experience. Do you know what I mean? I think I was on set for a few days. They were long days, but I suppose the advantage I've had is I've done some acting. So, I went over and I was lucky enough to get some scholarships in New York and LA to do some acting courses. And then, I've done a good amount in the UK, so it just gave me a little bit of insight of being on set. So I think what we're doing, it will be quite nice because a lot of the wrestlers will, be wanting to, help and work with, won't have that experience, so we can kind of guide them in it and give them a bit of a taste of it, and they can see what it's like. Because Derek will tell you, as such a accomplished actor, that, do you know what I mean? It's not for slouches, this acting. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Long, grueling days. Do you know what I mean? I think.
I think the only thing tougher than being an actor is being a wrestler. That's why I got so much respect. But because I've met some, I've worked with some really great actors, but I get I get more starstruck by seeing wrestlers. Do you know what I mean? Actually, for Fighting With My Family, I actually did some ADR work. So they knew that I was a wrestling fan, and they said, "Listen, we just need some people to come do some crowd ADR. Would you be interested?" And basically just spend a day watching the movie while it's still in the edit. And I was like, yeah, sure, and just doing something, And so I went to the studio and I was working, Steve Merchant and the sound engineers there, and just helping out, watching each of the scenes and help fill them out. And I didn't know that Soraya's parents and brother were in the studio next door.
Oh, get out! Really?
Watching the movie for the very first time, right next door to us. Right, so I came out after a break, and they had just come out, having just watched it for the first time, and Ricky Knight was there with his wife and their son and Zach Zodiac, and so I started talking to him, and then they video called Paige there and then because they just watched the movie. Do you know what I mean? And so they, and they introduced me to Paige and said, "Hey, I was like, yeah, I just watched your film as well. I've been watching your film. They just watched it." And I just remember, they were just so warm and so nice, and Soraya's mum, she was like saying it was just weird to see them up, somebody else playing you on the big screen.
I know. Like that must have been something for her, because the actress they got to play Paige was dead on. Like, she looked like her, she sounded like her, and for her to see like for her to see herself on screen, like being played by someone else, like that did an amazing job. That must have been great.
Well, do you know, because I was watching it in that studio, and when they had the shots of when she went to win the Divas Championship for the first time on
Yes.
Raw, me and Rishi were actually there. We're in the
Okay.
real, because we actually went to WrestleMania 30. And so
Yeah.
that whole weekend, we went to the Hall of Fame the night before, which had Mr.
Okay.
T, who talked about his mum for like, I think it was like an hour or something.
You got asked to
And
leave
then-
the stage. Someone came on, like tapped him and said, "Oh, you know, it's time."
But how cool is it that we saw Mr. T? Like Mr. T was like one of my heroes growing up in the 80s. It was all
Yeah.
Mr. T or Hogan. Like it was all the A-Team and all that. And, you know, to see in that one weekend, we saw Mr. T, and then the next night, it was like the show opened with Hulk Hogan, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yes.
And the Ultimate Warrior was there as well, you know, that night. So it's literally our entire childhood before our eyes, all in the one night. And
Yeah,
and
the
you know, and
Warrior
it was the
died
Warriors'
the next
last live appearance that next night as well. But
Yeah.
Soraya, Paige debuted that night as well. We saw the whole Shield. At
Yeah, that's
WrestleMania.
right.
And we saw Daniel Bryan win the championship. That was like of all the WrestleManias to go to.
Oh yeah, that classic.
The atmosphere when Undertaker's streak got broken.
Oh my
word.
God.
The feeling of the room, I can't even describe it. Do you know what I mean? It was just, it was a feeling of like disbelief. It was.
Well, me and Richie just looked at each other. We're like, huh? What?
Yeah.
Something's got to be happening next, right? Like this can't be real. And then it came up on the screen on the big Titantron, and one, I was like 21-1 or something. I was like, and we were like, no, the whole crowd's like, oh,
I know.
I was like, what?
We thought something had gone wrong.
Well, it kind of did because he got knocked out, right, or something.
Yeah. He did. I think he got a concussion during the match, but I mean, he says that was supposed, you know, that him losing was supposed to happen. But man, like Brock Lesnar though, like because Brock is over, like when Roman Reigns beat him, that should have been the one to put him to the first loss.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, wasn't it? But I think what I was happy about is after that win, they gave Lesnar like a mega push.
That's true.
So at least it was kind of like, and I suppose if you've got to lose your streak, obviously, you know, it's good to lose it to one of the hardest men in the world. So
that's and if you are going to lose, like Brock Lesnar is like, you could see him beating you in like a real fight.
Yeah, it was very credible, wasn't it? And one of my wrestling friends was just like, only in wrestling will fans moan when like one of the hardest men and UFC champions beats an old man. Only fans would moan about that.
I know,
well,
right?
I love wearing my wrestling t-shirts whenever I go to see wrestling live. You know, that's the only time I get to wear them, you know, out in public. And of all the t-shirts I had to wear, I was wearing an Undertaker one.
Nice.
So, you know, in New Orleans, of all the people, everywhere we went, everyone's like, oh, Undertaker.
Undertaker, yes.
Every single person we walked past, because for some reason, I'm one of the only people wearing an Undertaker t-shirt that they all wanted to point out at. And Rishi's like, oh, not another one. Like, we're getting heckled in the street by everyone. Like.
Oh, man. It was just good fun. It was a good... I don't know if you've ever been to a WrestleMania, Rocco. You've been to one?
No, I never been to a WrestleMania, but I did get my ticket for WrestleMania in Philly.
Oh, mate, you'll love it.
Which is coming up. Like that's gonna be coming up in not too long. And from what I heard, the rumored main event is Cody Rhodes against Reigns for the title in Philly. And there's even a rumor that Rock might actually be in Philly too. So I don't know.
Just the atmosphere around, you'll absolutely love it because like the town gets taken over by the vibe of it. So no, I'm glad you've got a ticket.
Oh, I already told my job that I'm gonna be off from probably Thursday, no, like Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, because I want to experience everything, like the
Brilliant.
wrestling conventions, the local
Man,
independent shows, and yeah, definitely.
yeah, I think the fan access one we went to, there was Cesaro there and Bob Backlund was there. And then
Nice.
because ours was in New Orleans, and that whole place, like New Orleans already is a party town, right? Let alone with wrestling. Like we were walking down that Bourbon Street, and oh my god, it was just wrestling fans everywhere, and like we saw like Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian just having a beer with people on the street, and
Oh
and
wow.
but we saw Ric Flair actually. We were eating in a
Woo!
Chinese restaurant buffet thing, and my wife was like, "Hey, that's Ric Flair." She was me and Richie were facing this way. She was sitting that way, looking out the window, and she saw him crossing the street. Me and
Yeah.
Richie just looked at her. We bolted out the restaurant.
Yeah. And all the fans just
And
go, woo, woo.
yeah,
Woo!
the whole street was going woo, woo. But even I think one morning we were at an IHOP, and we walk in. As we walk in, somebody in front of us holds the door for Rishi's brother to walk out, and it's Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And I'm like, I instantly turned into like a 7-year-old, and I went, Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah.
Oh, and he was like he was with his wife and his family, but he was so nice, man. He saw me straight away, and like he instantly came around and started talking to me, and and saying, hey, you want to have a picture, and like he was so nice, he was the one that was being accommodating, like, and so
Yeah.
it was such a nice guy, man.
Oh man, that must, yeah, like I'm looking forward when it comes in Philly, because I know the town is going to be full of WWE stars and legends, and so like I'm like thinking about it now, like it's going to be amazing.
Well, even just like in Philly when Heyman comes out, the whole place
Oh my
just goes
God. Yes.
bananas, right?
Yes. Like, even though Heyman's a heel, like whenever Heyman shows up for like a wrestling convention in Philly or one of the local wrestling shows, like sometimes he actually comes out to one of the local wrestling shows. And when he shows up in the ring, the place erupts for him because he is the one that created ECW. So, and like I wanted to ask you, like, because that you have a British wrestling film. So, Derek, are you the one that made the film, or are you starring in it?
Yeah, no. So I've written this film, and it's a
Okay.
film about a Japanese wrestler who comes to the UK because he needs to get money for his baby daughter back home, and then this British Indian wrestler takes him under his wing, but this Japanese wrestler is not all that he claims to be. He's actually just an Aussie con man who's never wrestled a day in his life. His only fight experience is just schoolyard fights and Aussie barroom brawls. And so, he ends up moving in to this British Indian guy's house and taking over his house, his girlfriend, and his job, and basically taking over his whole life. And so
Damn, he took over his girlfriend too. What?
yeah. So it's full of twists and turns. It's just one-upmanship back and forth, the audience has just kept guessing as to who's going to come out on top. And so yeah, it's full of comedy, and it's an outrageous, it's a heartfelt comedy as well, and hopefully with lots of wrestling in it, British wrestling in it as well, and Japanese strong style wrestling. So
Nice.
yeah, so we're going to run a crowdfunding campaign for it, so that we can, we've already started shooting some of it, but we want to get some money to, really give it, secure some really great locations, some really big venues and arenas to make it really look, or just higher tier venues to make it really bring the story to life, and hopefully get some, great wrestlers locally, if we can hit certain targets, maybe get some international wrestlers, just whatever we can do to make a great film.
You should get Paige in it.
Yeah, well, I think we should. But I said, I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like this having it in a film, this is what allows us to get dream matches, right?
Yeah.
Like you can have just say we had an unlimited budget, right? We could get like Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle, and they could have a match. Do you know what I mean? And just let movie magic take over, where they don't have to take any bumps and do anything. But we as fans get to watch Kurt Angle versus Bret Hart, or something like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know if we're going to get the budget to do that. If we can, then I'm booking it. You know, that's the main event. You know, the Japanese guy and the British.
You could probably get one or the other, though. I mean, you probably can't get both Bret and Kurt, but you could probably get one out of the two, right?
Yeah.
Because both Bret and Kurt have actually done films, so.
Well, that's the thing. You know, as many wrestlers that have experience in film or are interested in film that we can get, you know, we're looking into as well. Yeah, and even just in terms of the wrestlers that we can get, we're really just opening it up to see, you know, how much we can get from the crowdfunding to bring stuff in, because this movie is really about, at the end of the day, it's about these two underdogs. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're two journeymen, like, you know, the British Indian guy and the Japanese guy. They're journeyman wrestlers, and there's loads of them, like, you know, that have been in the industry. They never got their shot, you know, at the big time, and it's like, you know, they're probably never going to be on the grandest stage of them all, at, you know, the main event of WrestleMania or anything like that. So it's like, you know what, this is it, then let's just put it all on the line, do you know? And it's really just a movie about that, you know, two journeymen that are going out there and just going to basically literally kill each other by the end of the movie. You know, it's literally, they're just taking out all their frustrations in their lives and putting it into this match. This guy's just lost his wife, his girlfriend, his house, his dog, everything, right?
Oh my God.
And this guy's come in.
Oh my
and so,
God.
yeah, that's how the movie's going to culminate.
And Rishi, like, so you're the star of the wrestling film, right?
That's right. Yes, I suppose we're the co-stars, and as Derek says, he takes everything from me. So, I train him. I'm good to him. Get him into the wrestling scene, and you know, there goes my house girlfriend championship. But do you know what I mean? The stakes don't get any higher than that in life, you know. So you know, I remember Derek sent me the script, and couldn't wait to read it. But I was up late one night, and at 2 a.m. I opened it, and I just couldn't stop reading it. I thought, you know, it's late. I'll look at a bit of it. I'll look at a couple of pages, and I couldn't stop reading it. I just kept reading it. And I messaged him right early in the morning. I was like, "This is this is gold."
Nice.
You know what I mean? And do you know what I mean? There's so many little wrestling throwbacks in it. It's a real wrestling crowd pleaser, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of trying to take lots of different aspects of wrestling, all the different wrestling storylines out there, and you know that the wrestling fans will be familiar with. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's like, you know, like even just with the two of them, you know, like, you know, how many times in wrestling have we had best friends turn bitter enemies kind of thing, you know, like
God.
that's
like a storyline. It always happens.
It always happens, right? And so it's like wrestling fans will recognize little bits of it. Oh yeah, that's like, you know, and because I do loads of writing. I've been writing for ages, you know, and I write scripts, comedy scripts, I write sci-fi scripts, and you know, I pitch them to producers and stuff, and you know, and it's always like my style of writing's always been, you know, what's current, or what people are interested in, and producers will come back with notes saying, you know, could you redo this or whatever, you know, to make it appeal to their audiences or whatever, the kind of thing that they're trying to push out there, you know. And with this one, I was like, do you know what? Screw it, man. Like, this is just going to be my passion project. You know, I love wrestling. I don't care if, you know, there's who likes wrestling, who doesn't like wrestling, whatever, who gets it, who doesn't get it. This is the kind of movie that I would want to see. You know, something that with loads of twists and turns. You know, that's got exciting characters. It's loaded with comedy. You know, and just lots of wrestling throwbacks, and you know, and that's the kind of movie that I wanted to make when I wrote this one. So when I started writing this, usually it's, when you write, it can be quite laborious, you know, like you do a draft, which is like near impossible to get completed. And then once you've done that, it's just rewrite after rewrite. With this one, I was just like this, like the whole time. I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen next, you know. And I was just laughing to myself, like, you know, just telling myself jokes and just putting those jokes in there. Because even just something like you know, for wrestling, like this one's not in the trailer, but just one of the scenes is like they're just trying to come up with a name for the tag team. You know, and I don't know if you've ever tried to come up with a name for anything in life. You know, just trying to come up with a name for something is like near impossible because all names for everything is already taken. Do you know? And so
exactly.
And so these two clowns are just sitting there going through every single name under the sun, and you've got like basically you've got an Asian guy and an Indian guy who are going to be a wrestling tag team. So what do you think the names are going to come up with are going to be, right? The typical wrestling things that from the 80s, you know, that kind of evil foreigner kind of you know, throwback, and so they just go through a whole, they're just sitting there for like a good how many minutes just coming up with ridiculous names. But it's kind of that kind of, you know, outrageous comedy kind of stuff as well. And serious stuff as well.
So I have to ask, like next week, next Saturday is AEW All In London. Are you two going to that?
That's at Wembley.
Yeah, I've got to go because all you hear about, and I just missed the section on this. All you hear about in Britain is Wembley in the early 90s, SummerSlam with Bret Hart and
Bulldog,
and that was a huge success.
Warrior and Savage.
Yeah, but I just missed it. I just missed that. So it was just a little bit off my time. So that was a big success, but that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm more of a WWE fan than an AEW fan.
Okay.
However, do you know what I mean? I enjoy watching AEW, but I couldn't miss this. I couldn't miss the chance of going to Wembley and seeing it. Do you know what I mean? And it being amazing,
definitely,
because they might not come back there for another 5 years. And I can't miss people saying how good it was and me not being there when I had a chance to go. So yeah, no, I've only recently managed to, because we were going to be somewhere else, but I've recently managed to niggle some plans around and got some tickets. So yeah, no, very excited about it's hard to believe it's next Sunday now.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
MJF has just taken off that guy as well.
I know.
MJF and Adam Cole.
That whole friendship, like that's another thing like you were talking about, like because one of them is turning. Like I don't know who's turning, but one of them is turning.
You can smell it a mile away.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, it's going to be good. But there's such top tier talent on there, and it's going to be great to see, you know, the British wrestlers. Obviously, I've wrestled with Will Ospreay. You know what I mean? It'd be great to see him on the big stage against Jericho.
Will Ospreay and Jericho. That's going to be an amazing match.
Amazing. It's going to be great to see Saraya, you know, get that reception.
Yes.
You've been in the ring with Kenny Omega as well, haven't you, Rish?
Say again?
You've been in the ring with Kenny Omega as well.
Yeah, I have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's going to be cool to, you know, see it all unfold. So it'll be great to see him, and obviously Daniel Bryan when he came down, that was awesome. But then you've got like, I'm a bit gutted Jamie Hayter's injured.
Yeah, she's hurt too. Brian's hurt. Like that's a shame that her and Brian aren't going to be part of it because
that's gutting, because I think Daniel Bryan would have really liked to do it.
Oh my God,
history in England. It's Jamie Hayter, you know, I've trained with, and you know, she's done some of my sessions as well. So it would have been good to have seen her on the big stage. But you know, it's all good. It will just be a great moment, and I think I'm just most excited for the fans. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I was teaching this morning, and do you know what I mean? We always have a little chat whilst we've done our warm up. We have a stretch, we'll have a bit of a chat. And I asked, you know, who's going to AEW, and nearly all of them put their hands up. And you know what I mean? That was like 12, 13 people in there, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, we'll meet somewhere outside, because, you know what I mean, there are many more people in our academy who are going, and we'll get a nice picture outside, because they're just so excited to see it. Because all wrestlers are, you know, fans of wrestling as well.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
They're the fans that took it a little bit too far, right? They wanted to. They sitting in front row wasn't good enough. They had to get in between the rows.
Right, right.
But I mean, what it reminds me of was in Australia, one of the first matches times WWE came was in the year 2000, right? And so before that, before the year 2000, the time they'd come before that was like 1985, where Andre the Giant versus Big John Studd was like in the main event. So because Australia's so far away, like WWE does a lot more tours there now. But back then, to see them, to get wrestling in Australia was like near impossible. So when they came, the main event for that was called I don't know if you remember this, it was called Global Warning. Warning.
Yeah,
the main event. Yeah. So we did everything we could to get there, and the main event was like The Rock, Triple H, Brock Lesnar, in the main event. It was meant to be Hogan actually, but it was and the atmosphere was in Australia. Oh my god, like in the Australian wrestlers, like there's so much talent in Australia as well. Like it's only coming out now, like was it Grayson Waller but even like Storm or Ray Ripley, Buddy Murphy and Emma. Emma was Aussie. There's a lot of great Aussie talent as well. That it's great to see finally they're getting into the WWE or getting some sort of recognition, because before that was like bushwhackers, right? That's it, and they're not even Australian; they're like New Zealanders, And I was telling Rishi this the other day. It's like bushwhackers before they came to the WWE, they weren't even like. In WWE, they were a comedy act, right? They were doing
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but before that, they weren't. They were called the Sheep Herders, and they were.
Oh yeah, no, they actually had some really good tag matches.
Yeah, and so they were like a legit team, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, the last question I'm going to ask you guys is basically, where can fans follow you both at?
I think the best place for this, for the film, is just to jump on our website, www.guerrillapressproductions.com.
Okay.
Where they can learn everything about the film. They can follow us on Instagram as well. And so, that's probably the best place to go. If they go to guerrillapressproductions.com, all our social media links will be there.
Sweet.
We're both on Instagram, aren't we? Derek Siow, I'm Principal by Rishi Ghosh, and then you got Twitter as well, Derek. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so Instagram, Derek_Siow, SIOW, and Twitter as well, Derek Siow Actor.
Yeah, and I'm at Principal by 3 on Twitter. So I suppose we're gonna be bombarding all our medias with it when the trailer, which is coming out very soon, is.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we'll be bombarding all our media, and if there's any Facebookers on, Principal by Rishi Ghosh on Facebook as well.
Sweet, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking time out and coming on and chatting wrestling. Like my two favorite things to talk about is wrestling and horror films, as you can see with my Chucky over there. So like
well, that's so crazy, because our two favorite things in the world is wrestling and movies, and that's why we've decided to just put it all into one and make a wrestling movie. So there's no better show for us to be on than your show. Especially someone from Philadelphia, where Rocky was like born, and our movies kind of like,
and ECW and Cheesesteak.
Thank you so much for having us on and taking the time and being so kind as well, Rocco. It's much appreciated. It's really good.
Really appreciate it.
Definitely, yeah. This has been a blast. I always love hearing different wrestling stories. So yeah, this has been fun for me.
Thank you.
All right, we'll definitely have a great day and rest of the weekend.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good day.
All right, guys. Thank you.